I know not everyone enjoys Wes Anderson films, but I'm one of those that typically does. So I was excited to check out Asteroid City, and it is certainly unique. But should you see it? A grieving father travels with his tech-obsessed family to small rural Asteroid City to compete in a junior stargazing event, only to have his worldview disrupted forever. To say this cast is stacked is a massive understatement. I mean, typically Anderson uses many repeat actors in his work, but here, oh, good gravy. He's not only done that, but then he's doubled down and hired just about every actor in Hollywood, it seems. Now, some of the usuals include Jason Schwartzman, Edward Norton, Liev Schrieber, Tilda Swinton, Bob Balaban, Adrien Brody, Tony Revolori, Willem Dafoe, Bryan Cranston, Scarlett Johansson, and Jeffrey Wright. But we also get some newer additions like Steve Carell, Tom Hanks, Sophia Lillis, Matt Dillon, Maya Hawke, Chau, Hope Davis, and Margot Robbie. Now, see, I said the cast was stacked. There's also a ton more that I just didn't list. Now, in typical Anderson fashion, the setting is very deliberate and it's created with a very specific aesthetic in mind. This takes place in a fictional desert town of Asteroid City, where it's mainly just barren land, with a small service station, a diner, a motel, and a science observatory. Now, the colors that he uses are bright and distinct, giving a feel that they're not quite real, or maybe just that they're too polished and clean for the dusty environment. Now, there are a lot of pastels and cheery colors displayed, which then work in direct contrast to the underlying grief and melancholy of the story. We're following a grieving dad and his 4 kids, and he begins to have a sort of existential crisis. Now, the characters they interact with, they're all strange and odd. Exactly what you'd expect of characters in a Wes Anderson movie. They're peculiar and quirky, but most of them also possess this magnetic presence that just drew me into their emotions. And I love how unusual the characters are. It's like all of them are stunted in their emotional engagement with each other, but they're also very adept at their individual personality strengths. These work to make all of the characters unique and very engaging. Like, for example, Tilda Swinton is a scientist and astronomer. She retrains the wonderment of a kid by just being inquisitive, but also very awkward. And this allows her to communicate with some of the junior astronomers who are also socially awkward. Now, I had to sit with this overnight to gather my thoughts and just figure out what I really felt about the movie. Some of what the characters are facing in this story revolve around not understanding what the point is. Are they talking about the meaning of life? And we all know that answer is 42. But could they be talking about love or relationships or even grief? Or maybe it's also just a little meta and they don't understand the story that they're in. This dilemma many of them struggle with becomes very intriguing and enveloping, but not totally accessible either. Now, a potential question this story can evoke is, can I find enjoyment even if I have no idea of the point? It's kind of a deep question, but if you apply it to life in general, can I be happy or maybe content even if I have zero clue what the point of my existence is? How do I struggle with the unknown? Anderson doesn't outright answer this, but he certainly addresses the idea, sometimes subtly, and then other times very overtly. Jason Schwartzman really delivers when it comes to conveying this idea. He's the central focus of the narrative, even though he's surrounded by just a plethora of adjacent storylines. Now, strangely, the characters who are probably the most at ease with their existence are Schwartzman's 3 daughters. They don't have a lot of screen time, but when they do, they are confident in who they are because everything is concrete in their minds. And they have some hilarious interactions with both Schwartzman and Hanks, making me wish that we had more time with them within the story. Now, for me, I wasn't immediately in love with or even blown over by the story. I enjoyed what I saw, but it's the marinating on it and the possible meanings that have made me begin to fall in love with it. Every character has idiosyncrasies that make them endearing, but also complementary to the tone and the point of the narrative. Each is struggling with their place in the world, not necessarily their identity, but certainly their reason for being. Part of the movie feels a little clunky, and I think that's mainly because we get small chunks of story development that then jump to other areas of the story, almost like we're seeing vignettes that kind of connect, but are missing transitions. And everything does connect, or at least is somewhat related, but it also feels as if we bounce around multiple conversations to make sure we capture every interaction. As is expected, the cinematography is stunning, but also very familiar for anybody that's seen an Anderson movie. There are dolly shots that then pan around quickly to show us a visual that's part of their dialogue, and then the camera continues on the dolly, sliding through the scene to move us to a new location. Now, several different presentation styles are also employed, each serving a specific purpose to where we are in the story, and also being a narrative device that allows it to all make sense in this make-believe world. And this also allows for some unique sight gags, as well as just a way to address the audience in a way that doesn't feel like a gimmick, but instead feels natural. Anderson also uses some stop motion in addition to the live action that dominates the movie. It's odd, but it also works, and it looks good. Now, the pacing for this is a little slow at times. Some of that's because of the patience that he has with shots and dialogue. And there are moments that just sit on a character or a setting, allowing us to take in all the visual quirks. Now, Anderson painstakingly crafted all of the backgrounds to just match his style, but because there are multiple times that stop down for a few seconds each, it can break the momentum. So at the end of this, I really enjoyed Asteroid City, even if it took me a little while to understand why. Anderson builds a peculiar narrative surrounding the idea of existence and the unknown, using a meticulous setting to build out the fictional landscape where the quirky characters converge. The cinematography and visuals are exactly what you'd expect, symmetrical and exacting. While the pacing may be a bit slow in spots, the acting is captivating, especially thanks to Jason Schwartzman, Scarlett Johansson, and Jake Ryan. This isn't going to be for everybody. Even Wes Anderson fans may not gravitate to this as much as just some of his more accessible works. But if you do decide to venture to Asteroid City, you're in for a funny, charming, and existentially questioning escape. There's no sex, some nudity, a little profanity, not really any violence. I give Asteroid City 4 out of 5 couches. So do you have a favorite Wes Anderson movie? Let me know which one you love and why in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.